I will try to speak louder, okay, and you tell me if it's not enough, and then I'm going to take the microphone. Is that fine? So like I talk right now is fine? Good. So I was about to say, since the first talk was in Polish, ich werde jetzt einfach auf Deutsch reden, also herzlich willkommen. No. Very warm welcome from me. So yeah, my talk is, let's start by who am I? So my name is Matthias. I'm from Germany. So this week is my Polish tour. This is the first stop. Very cool stuff. Otherwise, I mean, in my day job, I'm developer advocate at JetBrains. I do all the .NET things with Writer, ReSharper, a little bit of Codana as well. I'm also very interested in DevOps tools. I would also say I'm an open source evangelist. Yeah, this is why I'm here. This is why I'm talking to you. And yeah, since the beginning of my career, I was interested in developer tools. So that just makes sense. Before I start, a little note in my own mission, or in work mission basically. Has anyone seen the live stream that we recently had about Writer going non-commercial? So yeah, I see a couple. So I just thought it's a nice thing. JetBrains makes this possible that I come here because the talk itself is not not much related, let's say, or my work is not related to the topic I'm talking about today. So if you ever had an eye on using Writer, this is the time, because now it's just free for non-commercial use. Okay, but let's now start with the actual talk. And I want to get going with a little bit about my open source resume, we could name it. So at the beginning, I guess like many of you, I was just a consumer of NuGet packages. So everything that's up there, I can just use, yeah? At some point, and that was with my first job, closely after my studies, I joined the company and they were building the Remotion framework. And this was quite interesting because Remotion, or part of it, was also a dependency of back then Entity Framework. It was called Relink, and they used that project. So I was not really working on Relink, but closely at least. Then tables have turned, and because of my job, I started working on something that I call TestFX. And the idea was to, I mean, it's just an image of how it looked like. It was a test framework, or better say, a framework to build test frameworks, actually. And yeah, that was my first time being a maintainer of something. And that was for about 3 years. And afterwards, I started working on Nuke. And that was also interesting because the way how I got there was because for TestFX, I was trying to build a nice CI pipeline, etc., and build automation. But I didn't find anything great, let's say. And then I thought, okay, this is much more useful to the whole developer audience, to the .NET community, because switching test frameworks is hard. So I just stopped and went on with Nuke. So that's about my resume. But there's one big disclaimer for the whole talk, and that is I'm not really an open source spokesperson or anything like that. So through this project, I've met a lot of other maintainers, and there are controversial topics, and much of what you see here is just my own opinion. Yeah. So not to say we all agree on that, I mean the maintainers at large, but it's really just my own opinion in many of these facts. Or not facts, but opinions. Yeah, and I just have a note here. I would actually also consider myself rather strict as being a maintainer. So I might not always come across as the friendliest on the internet, unfortunately. I like to think this is much different in the real world. But yeah, let's continue. Wrong slide. This one. Yeah, what will we look at? First, I want to talk a little bit about open source. What is open source actually? Followed by the good and the bad, and then some tips for maintainers and some tips for consumers. And before I forget this, tips for maintainers is not really, I mean, even if you're not building an open source project, it's still something that consumers could help the maintainer with. Yeah? So a lot of these things, they're not specifically for maintainers, but they're also a good opportunity for contributors to come in. And yeah, maybe also one question or another question here, is anyone maintaining an open source project? I expect at least one hand. Yeah, okay. Good. So first topic, or first part, is what is open source? And I want to give you a brief history, so to say. So at the beginning, let's just open all these up. Virtually all the software was just public domain, so it was free for everyone to use. There was some time when we saw the first proprietary software, usually with source still. And then there was a time where source code was deemed copyrightable. And many of those things, they stem from jurisdiction, is it the right word? But from the US, basically. Yeah? So this is where all this starts. They said it's copyrightable. Then also the shipping over time started to fade in terms of the source code with the binaries. And later, some point in the 80s, object code was also deemed copyrightable. And then suddenly we also saw the GNU and free software movement, where basically they tried to kind of counterattack that with more free software. Then we also saw the first Linux release, the rise of many open source projects, including Apache HTTP server, MySQL, PHP Perl. Two of them, MySQL and PHP, was how I got into programming, actually. And also, this is a big player in the .NET community. Microsoft kind of recognizes the threat in the late 90s. And you know this, embrace, extend, extinguish. I think I will talk about it later again. But also OSS breaches into a lot of those softwares, yeah, into the enterprise. Mainstream of open source projects, today we have Docker, Ansible, the NoSQL movement, and basically everyone uses open source. I would assume so. At least, next slide, there's one statistic that gives me right, because you can see, yeah, how many are using open source. That's quite a lot. I would be interested, is there anyone here who can confidently say that they're not using open source in any way? So no hands. Okay, good. So yeah, open source is everywhere. And I got this little quote from a colleague of mine, and I always forget to ask her about her sources to that. But yeah, she claimed, and I guess I'm sure there's some source for that companies save $60 billion per year by using open source. So meaning not investing their own time. Because rapid innovation, no licensing costs, and lower cost of ownership in general. Sometimes this thing doesn't work. Okay, the open source initiative, let me also just open this up. It kind of comes from the spirit of sharing with mates. It's just, I build something, you can use it. It also relies on the fact that proprietary software was kind of marked as the enemy. And we can also, okay, open source is a trademark on the right, so that's actually a trademark. And we also see OC approved licenses. And that includes that they have very specific characteristics you have to fulfill if you want to be OC approved. And that is free distribution, source code available, derivatives are allowed, no limitation on usage, etc. And a couple of examples for that are GPL, MIT, BSD, and Apache license. And the main goal here is probably to release the maintainers from liability. Interestingly, that doesn't work in all countries. So just in my case, for instance, in Germany, those licenses, they don't matter. If someone in Germany would be using the open source project, that license doesn't really matter, yeah, because I'm from Germany, they're from Germany, and then it's called Schenkung, so it's slightly different legal situation, but never mind. And yeah, I said that already, designed to around the freedom of consumption. Next. Okay, types of open source. I will open those as well. So I initially started, like I said, with this contributing to an open source. Oh no, let's start at the top. So the first are hobbyist projects. Those are projects that you're personally interested in, but they don't really matter in your day-to-day job. You just have fun working on those. Then there's also the side gig, that was the TestFX project that I was working on, because it was kind of related to work, but work didn't really want to pay me for that. Then there's also the ancillary projects. Those are byproducts to the usual operational work of what a company is doing. And there are professional open source projects where really the project is, profitable. Yeah. And the interesting fact here is that at some point you have to put this into a perspective of business alignment. Because a person who works as a hobbyist on a project, there's not really a business alignment because they just don't get any funds for that. Yeah? So there could be any point in time where they say, okay, I'm done with this. It's a little bit less of a risk with side gigs. And then the more we move towards professional projects, the more aligned is the business with that. And yeah, influential for that are truck factors as well. So truck factor is a thing, or does ring a bell for everyone. Basically, the number of people who can be hit by a bus before a project dies. Yeah, that's the truck factor. Yeah, a little bit more of basics then. Also, the main actors in open source. So there are a couple of more, of course, but those are the three that I think are the biggest groups, and that is the maintainers. Actually a quite small group usually, but I mean, if you think about the impact, of course. Then there are consumers and hopefully also some contributors. There are much more. There can be advocates, there can be sponsors, moderators, etc., but those are the main ones. Okay, the good and the bad. I will start with maintainer opportunities, and that was great. I think that was the one thing that motivated me initially with my first little project, and that is become a better developer. Yeah, because if you try something on your own, you surely get better with something because it's really driven by your interest. It's great for CV too. That is, in fact, also a reason why I landed my job at JetBrains, because I was just developing a ReSharper plugin also for the test framework. And at some point that rang some bells there, and then, yeah, I got my foot into the door. Visiting conferences for free is also nice. This was shortly after I started with Nuke, and they invited me to Moscow at the .next conference, very cool conference, and also some of the meetup maintainers or organizers, they said, oh, this project is so cool, it's much better than Cake. And I said, yeah, this is cool, and a lot of people in the audience. Awards and reputation, of course, at some point it was also a goal for me to receive an MVP award. Yeah, for those who don't know what it is, that's usually an award you get if you're doing something great in the Microsoft.NET area. Unfortunately, I never came into the situation to actually get it, but I think it's a little bit politically. Yeah, but I will leave it to that. But some other things that are great to see, stuff like this, this little screenshot is from a job offer, and it just felt awesome to read, oh yeah, we have cutting edge technology, and then you suddenly see your own project in there. Even more so, who recognizes this diagram or graphic? Yeah? Marcin?
I don't know the name, I just know.
Anyone else? Yeah, I heard it. That's the ThoughtWorks technology radar. So the company where Martin Fowler, the great refactoring guy, is on the board. And yeah, just one day, one of my friends said, "Oh, you're in the technology radar." I'm like, "What?"
Was it more than 1 year?
Huh?
Was it more than 1 year?
You mean how it was repeated to be on the technology radar? I don't think so, no. But interestingly, it also happened during a time, because I was very consistently working on this project, and it was during a time where I didn't do anything for like a month or so, which is a lot in my book, at least, how I was usually working on this. Okay, networking in France, this was also a great moment. So this guy, initially when he was talking on the Slack channel, I didn't really like him, yeah. But meanwhile, he's one of my best developer friends. I also visited him and his family. And then when we meet, it's just awesome. Also last year, we spent the time together here in Krakow. And actually also last year in Krakow, I was giving this talk the very first time at the Code Europe conference. And I should also say Martin is in between us here, so I will leave a couple of more words later. So also a great, I would say friend or acquaintance, whatever you choose, we can take that. Yeah, and money/business, yeah, that's also possible if you work hard enough, I would say. And if you're lucky enough also, yeah. So it's not always just about putting work in, but also, being lucky sometimes at least. Benefits as consumer. So there, I mentioned that already, low cost of ownership, no licensing cost, security as well, because a lot of people are looking at the same code. It's not proprietary, hidden somewhere or anything. We can just all inspect the code and feel a little bit more secure about it. Agility, because we can, we could also say we don't want to use it anymore, for instance. And in essence, this whole consumer perspective is kind of like standing on the shoulder of giants, yeah, because you're using a lot of those products that have been developed for a very long time, a lot of eyes looking at that, a lot of competent eyes also, and yeah. Maintainer responsibilities, yeah, so they're not just benefits, but I can just talk from my own experience here again. Development and research, a lot of people just don't see what's everything, what this is entailing. Application of best practices, because a lot of people are also looking at your code, and a lot of people will also tell you, how the fuck, what did you do there? Yeah, it just happens. Documentation and website. People want documentation even if they don't read it. Always interesting to see that. Regular updates, of course, like I have to update for .NET 9 right now. Communication and promotion, like going to meetups, to conferences, etc., and all this stuff. And now let's also talk about consumer risks. So first of all, intellectual property. What does it mean? Well, usually, depends on from what side you're coming, but intellectual property in those regards, like if you or if the project has a certain license, then you would need to open up your product too. But also security can be a risk too. There have been plenty of, I'm not sure if I have a slide for that, but there have been a few incidents where people try to inject malicious code into projects. Just recently I saw another example, and they try to hide it among some other, minor changes that look reasonable. But yeah, it can still happen that some of this malicious code slips in if the maintainer is not careful enough. And let's not blame the maintainer, yeah, because I'm pretty sure they're doing all they can, but even they make mistakes sometimes, yeah. Lack of support. If a project, has no resources to give support, then you might not have support. Abandonment can be a risk. And that leads me to the maintainer risks. And I hope you recognize the burning man in the back. That's how I feel sometimes. That's why I picked that image. Burning man. So one of the risks is no users. So this was quite interesting. This is, like I mentioned before, my first project, TestFX. You see, for a very long time I was working on it very enthusiastically. Still just 34 stars. I mean, yeah, that was disappointing after 2 years. Then there's also entitlement and abuse sometimes. This is a very funny story. I will just read it first. So there was a comment on the Visual Studio extension gallery, and it reads, unfortunately it is not working out of the box. I set up Nuke on a new console app and installed blah, blah, blah. Please document how to set this up, and I will gladly update the review. Yeah, 1 star. If there was an opportunity to give 0 stars, I'm sure that would have happened as well. Funny thing is, I always become somewhat of a stalker in those incidents, and I tried to research where this guy is coming from, and it turns out he was just living next door to me. I mean, not next door, but next street, literally, yeah. And I was thinking about going by with some flowers, saying, okay, thanks, this is the first review I got. Yeah, it was a lot of work building that extension. And yeah, here's some flowers for you for the first review or first rating. This is the slide I mentioned earlier already, embrace, extend, extinguish, before I didn't quite remember the words. But anyone knows the case of the apt-get project? No one? Really, no one? Okay, then breaking news about Microsoft. So apt-get was a project developed by a single guy, and that is basically the predecessor of Winget. Yeah? And that guy was invited by Microsoft to Redmond, and they talked about it, and then there's a whole blog post. I'm just trying to summarize it. And then he said they basically ghosted him. And they implemented the product from ground up, so with the same idea still. And yeah, then apt-get unfortunately died with a lot of great ideas, but basically, yeah, you can really feel that extinguish in that, yeah. Trademark, by the way. Victim of own success is also a risk because with higher adoption among the community, you also get a lot more requests. This is not working, that is not working, why are you doing this? My life is terrible because of you, all this stuff. And unfortunately also, even those companies that use it successfully, they will just say, oh yeah, a star is enough, yeah, here, some help, you get a star. Sometimes not even that, but I will get back to this point in some minutes. Takeaways so far, yeah, the problem is, in general, there's little to no contribution back, even though a lot of people are using open source projects. And it might be false, I mean, free open source, but someone is paying. Yeah? Someone is paying with their own time. And that leads to a sustainability problem of projects. But yeah, I just mentioned that. What about the cost of maintenance? Someone is paying for that. And the main reason for that, there's just no business alignment. Because why deal with all those issues if all you get is nothing, basically. Okay, tips for maintainers. So I walked through a lot with my project, and those are some nice things I discovered that I want to share. So first of all, bring passion. Yeah, otherwise you wouldn't do that anyways. Also believe in yourself, because with Nuke, actually, at the very beginning, a lot of people were saying, not invented here. Yeah, not invented here syndrome. I think a lot of people have heard that. You know, and they claimed, he just wants to build a new project based on Roslyn. And I thought, it's not even based on Roslyn. I mean, yeah, it's compiling with Roslyn, but it's not using Roslyn as a framework or anything. So that was just funny. Also, that's a big one. My first project, TestFX, made that mistake, and that is not keeping an eye on integration. because a project should always integrate in as many tools as possible. If you don't do that, then there will be some, you need some workarounds to make it work with other tools, and that's just always bad. Have patience, like I mentioned earlier. There was some time I didn't do I didn't do anything. But still, sometimes it just takes a while until you get some rewarding moments. For ramping up, yeah, very simple stuff. Pick a license, README with elevator pitch, because you also want to gain, you want to be, how to say, engaging or attractive for other people. Maybe some other people come in. Then I have contribution guidelines. Code of conduct, no one reads that, but yeah, don't, just be friendly. Security policy makes sense from some point in time. And creating a community space is also good, something like Slack or Discord. Yeah? So I have a lot of discussions there, and people can ping me there, and yeah. Get OSS licenses. That's the one slide where I can sneak in JetBrains again. But yeah, also Azure credits you get for free, JetBrains IDEs. Meanwhile, of course, also SignPath. Interestingly, that's the company that I have been working at before. I mean, how to say, a sub-company of that, but still. So they provide code signing for bigger projects, including also Git extensions, for instance, and CI/CD services. So yeah. Coding practices, I talked about this already. Everyone looks at your code, yeah, and then says, well, what's going on there? But yeah, generally I would advise to have some higher level tests that make sure that you're achieving your goals with the project, or that it's doing the work that you're expected to. Then maintain a changelog, not necessarily from the beginning, but from some point in time, because this always takes time, but at the start I would say just quickly, rapidly implement some first, not mock-ups, what's the other word? Prototypes. That's a good one too. Start with version 1.x. So for a very long time, Nuke was deployed under version 0. Blah blah blah, and it was how to say, solid and I would say reliable. But still, people told me, make a version 1, because otherwise we can't use it, because it looks like it's still in development. Yeah, at some point I just bumped it up to version 5, I think. Right from 0 to 5, and I thought, okay, yeah, now it must be really solid. Follow semantic versioning, although this is not always possible, because sometimes you're fixing something for that one person, and that same fix is breaking it for another person. But basically, major, minor patch, yeah, major always for breaking changes, minor for new features, and patch for fixing stuff. Funny stories arise from that. Yeah, there's pretty much behind most of the bullet points. There's some backstory in my head that's going on, because I had versions that I published where people then just went on to me and said, oh, have you never heard about semantic versioning? I said, yes, I did, but I didn't know before it would affect you in that way. Yeah, CI/CD pipelines. Of course, you use Nuke for that. Yeah, that's the way you go. And I tend to say, don't carry old weight. So initially, a lot of maintainers they look too much about backwards compatibility. And I think sometimes that's just dragging you into the other direction. Sometimes it's, at least I think, okay to break, hopefully make it obvious, yeah. But sometimes as a single maintainer, for most projects, it's just not worth looking at that. Okay. Telemetry. Yeah, this was also interesting. Telemetry always helps you to find out how is your project used. And of course, I spent like 3 weeks researching, am I legally allowed to obtain telemetry data? Funnily, everyone is fine with .NET telemetry data being captured, But with me, they're just saying, are you out of your mind? What's happening to my data? Although all the data points are there, and there's really nothing, personal inside there. But yeah, I got something like this out of that, like number of repositories where stuff is being used, and etc. Promotion. Yeah, what are some ways where you can promote your stuff? Twitter, Reddit, it's always good to, always follow each other, and then they hopefully retweet or reshare. Discord, Slack, I already mentioned that. Well, Stack Overflow is meanwhile kind of dead, I think, but I don't know, maybe you can tell it ChatGPT. A newsletter in the .NET community, there are plenty of newsletters. We at JetBrains, we also have something which happens monthly. Community leaders and stand-ups. Yeah, I also tried that, like pinging a couple of folks in the .NET community who have very high reputation. Sometimes you just don't get an answer, but sometimes you're also lucky and they kind of put it onto their slides and give a little reference. Conferences and meetups, I already mentioned that, and online live shows. That's a very cheap way, and particularly during initial COVID times, because it was just easy to apply for a meetup on the other side of the earth and give that meetup talk, and then people would hear about it. I mean, nowadays, I guess it's a little bit harder to convince meetups to do online shows again, but yeah, anyway. About content that is mainly inspired from, what's his name? Newtonsoft Jason, what's his name? James Newton King, who said, yeah, write about performance. That's a good point to get the attention of developers. But also Fluent APIs are interestingly very high on that list, and minimal APIs with the introduction of, I'm not a web developer, but in that area of ASP.NET, suddenly everyone was talking about minimal APIs, and I was wondering, were all the APIs before then not minimal or anything? I mean, I was always putting some time into API design, but yeah, it is what it is. And James was calling it find the developer catnip, so that developers go crazy. About HTML, yeah, about the web presence, I want to leave a couple of words. Because let's also unfold all of these, I started with the docfx project. Anyone is using that? No one? Yes? Are you happy with it? No, yeah. So we share that experience. I started with docfx as a platform to implement the web presence and documentation, etc. But it was really a real pain, yeah. And at some point, I was looking at other stacks, so to say. It's funny how, and I include myself there, but a lot of, let me not say a lot, but some .NET developers, they feel afraid of looking at other stacks, me included. But at some point, I was looking at like Docusaurus, for instance, which is a React framework to build websites. And that was chef's kiss. I fell in love right away. And then I also combined it with a couple of other things like Markdown snippets, helps you to keep code examples in sync from a repository to the documentation. Algolia is searched, discuss for comments, signed through GitHub, basically. As Cinema is a nice thing if you're implementing something that is a console application that can record sessions and they are interactive and all. Fathom and Undraw and Animista for animations. And interestingly, that first was docfx, so I got some statistics. And the second one is all the new stuff. And you can see how this tripled. I mean, at least twice, yeah, in terms of views. Visitors, yeah, almost 1.5 maybe. So this has a great impact. But yeah, I just want to say with that, a good stack is worth a lot. I didn't have that time or energy to put all that effort with DocFX, but with Docusaurus it was much better. And by the way, Docusaurus, that's an open source project maintained by Facebook, yeah, or Meta, meanwhile. So motivation and health is still important, and I grabbed many of those points from a presentation that someone held on one of our JetBrains conference live streams. So very important to, let's unfold everything, reflect on goals, also look back and see what has been achieved, celebrate wins, like the, how's it called, technology radar stuff, but also to prioritize self-care, so maybe not care about other people's problems, yeah, but also learn to say no if someone requests a feature. And I embraced this during the last 2 years a lot. That's also an answer to your question, by the way. Learn to, or feel free to ignore. So I did that a lot. But still, it's going somewhere, of course, but some things I just let the community, figure that out. And vent with friends, that's also good. The iceberg phenomenon, yeah. So a lot of things that you see on the top are bugs, feature requests, complaints, entitlement, but the majority, and that's the bottom part, gets stuff done. Yeah? So that's always, I think that's the biggest issue in open source. You see a lot of negativity, but in reality, a lot of people just use it successfully. So, and you could ask, is that so? So besides those website metrics, you could also, we had that already, but you could also look at consuming packages, for instance. Meanwhile, I crossed the 10 million but number, that's what I mean. And a lot of other open source projects also rely on Nuke, actually. This graphic I just updated, and this is very funny. So this is a star tracker, yeah? So a graph about the stars and how many stars a certain project had at a certain time. And I put all my competitors there as well. And you can see, yes, yellow, Nuke, and there was something happening in 2023 which kind of gave a good bump, until today, actually. And anyone has an idea, what did I do to the community to give me stars for free? Any idea? Probably. Huh? Say again? Version to bump to 6. Okay, no, that was not that easy. Yes, in some way it is, yeah. And it was that blog post. I got some hate, but not a lot of support this time also. So there was an update on IDE extensions. Before that, if you remember, I published those on Visual Studio Marketplace and got those nice reviews, etc. That doesn't make you invest any more time in it. Yeah, really, it's there's no fun in working on a project if it's just like that. But with that blog post, I told people, okay, you have to sign into GitHub if you're using that web page, and I will ask before you can download if you have started the repository. And so if they click the download link, they will just be directed to the repository or to the paragraph. There's some paragraph lower at the end there, and then they can read and say, okay, I need to start. I need to give something back, yeah. I will also say this was a good opportunity. There are some people that I think, how to say, that can be very aggressive and act in a way that is really bad for the project, because it can make the maintainer like really depressed and all. Yeah, that can happen. And with those people, I can just block them from the repository so they never can give a star anymore, so they cannot download anything. I use that very rarely, but in fact, I used it already. So then what other things can we do? Financial incentives. Yeah, if you have a project, then create an examples repository. At that point, I just want to remind you, tips for maintainers, yes, but if you have a project that you rely on, then maybe those are good suggestions for the maintainer to make it a little bit more profitable. Yeah. So yeah, examples repository, open core with add-ons, logo on the website. So if you're sponsoring, I have that too. You can also bring sticker or send people stickers and swag if they like it. About the stickers, also nice. Do you remember the guy from the earlier photo where I said initially I didn't like him that much and then we became good friends? So he sent his colleague, and at that time I was working in Munich still, and he sent his colleague to meet with me, and then this guy pulled up a whole stack of stickers, like 1,000, and said, here, this is yours now. You can give it away at conferences, etc., etc. So yeah, cool moment. You can also get people into helping you by providing faster issue tracking. So yeah, if people need that, then we basically go back to this lack of support argument. But if you're saying as a maintainer, yeah, if you want better issue tracking, then give me money, or no, the company says we pay you and we get faster issue tracking. Then work on aligned features. That has happened also quite often. So every now and then, not a lot of times, maybe 3 cases, but sometimes people just come to me and say, we would like to have that feature. Does it align with your idea about the project? And if yes, then we would like to sponsor that. And the holy grail, so to say, and that would probably be the best to jump on right away, is dual licensing. Because that makes people really pay for it without much trouble involved. Yeah? But I can tell you for myself why I didn't choose that path until now, and that is because it has so many legal reasons that I tend to not use this dual licensing approach. Okay, tips for consumers. This will be fun. Yeah, give a project a star, follow social media accounts, upvote and share content. Those are all the things that you can do pretty much with 0 effort. Yeah, give ratings where possible, of course, 5 stars. Yeah, not 0 or 1 star, and just generally spread the word. Spread the word, not the world. Interaction don'ts. Yes, remember there's no SLA, so service license agreement. Yeah, this always has a bad taste if people come and ask, why is my issue not fixed? Why is my PR not merged? Why is this issue, or this issue took a whole evening to investigate? Or is this project dead? I love this. Yeah, this is the best. So, like almost 2 years ago was really, like I told you, I was pretty consistently working on it, but there was a time when my grandfather passed away, and I was 3 weeks, I didn't do anything. And then I read that comment on Reddit. Yeah, I'm not surprised actually, but you just don't know what to say about it. And yeah, of course, you're doing it wrong. That's why all folks are using your project, because you're doing it wrong. That makes sense. And yeah, usually a lot of maintainers have that mentality of maybe even actually answering like that. Would you like your money back? Yeah, to those folks using the open source project for free. Yeah, get your money back. Who remembers that situation from Breaking Bad? No one? No Breaking Bad fans here? Oh, then I took a terrible screenshot. But yeah, Jesse is having a conversation, and yeah, of course, no problem, DBAA, and he has no idea what she is talking about, and DBAA just means don't be an arse, yeah? So yeah, that's a good rule of thumb, but interaction do's on the other side. Generally, follow contribution guidelines. Sorry. So I put a lot of work into those. Then redocumentation, those what all people request, and also the FAQ. Match the level of quality. I think that's also a good thing because you see that quality. I'm talking about pull requests in this case. Like I had some instances where people tried to fix their own bugs, but at the same time they break so much other stuff. They don't follow code starts. Yeah, and it's no fun for a maintainer to add a lot of nitpicks. I mean, those small comments where just try to match the overall quality of the product. Then I would always say, remember the advantage because you all are already using the project free of charge. Remember the license. Again, Breaking Bad, as is. Bogdan is a nice character. Walter also says he has this mono eyebrow. Yeah, cool scene, as is. But that is what's in there in at least the MIT license, yeah, as is. But you can also support with time, like help other consumers, speak at meetups, I mentioned that already. Investigate other people's issues, that can also be helpful. Because then the maintainer doesn't have to put in all the work. Become a contributor yourself, of course, and take ownership for certain areas of a project. Yeah. Generally, overall, to increase the truck factor. That's one point I'm basically coming back from the introduction. This is what even a consumer business wants. They want the truck factor to increase so that there's less risk that if a project or if one of the maintainers says goodbye, then you still want to feel confident to maybe continue that project under a new, head of maintainers or whatever. Personal donations, this can be controversial. Yeah, so there are a lot of people who say, yeah, it should be my company sponsoring a project, not me, because I'm working for the company and it's not. It's not for my personal benefit. But I would ask, is it really that the case? Yeah, because if you're also responsible for actually incorporating that project, if you are part of the decision to use that project, then I would say it's not completely right because it also makes your own time more enjoyable, quicker. Maybe you can get I think that, yeah, maybe you get a better work performance review from your manager. So that was too quick. Those things could be taken into account as well. And now I get back to Martin, who's sitting with us here. And I just want to say it's a great event also for me to actually meet him. We had in one of the JetBrains formats, we were lucky to have him and talk about Quest PDF. So an open source project that can generate PDF files for you. And really, I can tell you, this is the most viewed episode of that format. Yeah, around, where is it? 27,000 views. It was absolutely awesome. And since I just need to, also include, that's the first time I have this slide. But it's just fun to see that a lot of those things, no, not a lot, but the dual license approach, for instance. I see you kind of adapted that, right? And no, the thing that I want to say, back then it was probably in the early beginnings of Quest PDF. You weren't on the dual license train yet, right? Or it was right before? Huh?
So the decision of introducing dual licensing was a response to getting more popularity and having higher demand on the project.
Yeah, but was it before or after?
It was definitely after. Like
yeah, after.
2 years after.
Yeah. But that is just fun to see from back then and now to see how the project has grown. I just can say I'm super happy for you that it turned out that way, that it's not went into abandonment or anything, so that it's profitable and really got into this late stage of having what was it called? A professional open source project. Yeah. So my hand of applause you definitely get. Yeah, once more. But now I also want to briefly talk about how was this possible. And company sponsorships are worth much more because they can afford much more, obviously. But the way how I got there, how to have this kind of format, and it's called, I didn't actually mention it, but it's called open source power-ups. And Quest PDF was one candidate we had. We had a lot of others, I think 12 in total. And now I'm having 2 more projects, which should follow soon. But yeah, we were just trying to give back to the community. And what are we giving? We have a stream with them. Usually because I'm leading that project, not Quest PDF, but the open source power-ups thing. I'm also trying to help in areas that the maintainer likes to see improvement. Many times that's also just a resharper or a writer plugin, but even that can be quite helpful. And they also get sponsored for, back then it was a year. I'm sorry, we later increased to 2 years. But yeah, for the new people on there, they get sponsored for 2 years. And we're not even using those projects. Yeah. So the question is, how did I get JetBrains to actually do that? And it was a, I would say, long ride. But let's go through the process a little, the general process. So the first is find the correct person who can approve such a sponsorship. Then don't really operate on altruism. I tried that initially and said, well, come on, you see, .NET community, open source is debated so many times, and we have to do something. We like to think we're good people. I actually think that way, but yeah, everyone has their own opinion. But yeah, it didn't quite work initially. But what I can recommend, and many of those points are actually from a blog post, I will reference it later. I think it's not on the slides. But yeah, craft a story around saving time, saving money, or generating more money. And that was actually quite difficult because this format didn't really, per se, generate any more money. But the way how I made that more attractive for everyone involved or having to approve that was, okay, I can always try in many cases to implement a plugin for that. And then that plugin also is a good example for other developers who want to develop a new plugin, yeah? Stuff like that. And generally, it also makes writer and resharper better. But yeah, at the end, I can tell you from my own perspective, I just wanted to see more open source projects succeed. And yeah, get some reward, basically. Open source grants are a good thing, so that is usually when your company reserves a certain amount of money and then it gets decided who gets that money, or employees can, and here usually you just vote. So Microsoft also has this fund. Unfortunately, I have to say it's always the very, very big projects that get funds through those programs, and a lot of other projects which are equally important is the wrong word maybe to say, but yeah, in some sense maybe, but also sometimes much more critical and sometimes even more complicated. And just because they're not at the end of the chain for a product, then yeah. Like for instance, I'll give you one example. How many of you would know that nsubstitute, mock, I'm not sure actually, but Fake It Easy, they all based on the same foundation, and that is dynamic castle. Yeah, I think it was called that way. If someone knows, please correct me. But it was dynamic castles. There was another thing, castle Windsors, but yeah, dynamic castle it was, I think. Okay, and some more questions that are good to ask in that situation, like what does the project do? I mean, if you need to convince a certain person, where is it used? What values do you get from it? Who would receive the money? That's that is something people want to know if they spend the bucks, yeah, and how is it used? And what does the company get in return. And that, at the same time, is a good opportunity for a maintainer to reserve some space in the README or on the website for sponsorship, for sponsoring, for logos of sponsoring companies. Okay, so takeaways, that's the final slide. Then it's over and you're free. Takeaways, I would say have compassion. I saw it from both sides. And I just want to tell you one more story here. I had an interaction with open source, with a maintainer back then when I was still just consumer. And I think I also tried to argue a little bit too hard. And it was also a time where my English was, well, even less, even worse than today. But yeah, at some point I kind of felt that he was not happy with the way how I expressed my thoughts. And he said, well, you can have your own opinion. And that kind of got me at that moment. Yeah, and I thought, okay, yeah, but maybe I also learned it a little bit later, that as a maintainer, you have a lot of those conversations. You always have that one person who thinks, I know that better, yeah? But it's a matter of how you approach this, and sometimes maintainers can also have a bad day or something. So yeah, have compassion is what I want to say at that point. Then also, as a consumer, try to make it easy for maintainers, like craft a good issue if you file one, for instance. Try to increase the truck factor. I think that's the biggest takeaway for open source projects, because otherwise they can just, get abandoned. And maybe help them to improve the business alignment. And that's it. I have a lot of people who kind of helped me with that journey. Sometimes it's through presentations that they did, like Aaron has a great presentation on open source in general. Also Geoffrey, James I mentioned, and Rodney is one of my best buddies. That's the person that I go to when I need to vent, and it's still planned to actually meet him. He's from the US, and yeah, if you want to have the slides. The first one is without my vCard. The second one is with the vCard, where you have the social links, etc. So if at any point you have questions or so. And yeah, before I finally close, I just want to mention, if you ever have some questions about Rider or ReSharper, Kodana, etc. So all the JetBrains stuff, then feel free to contact me. And that's it. Thanks.